Hello my spooky ducks, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, and welcome to a very special spooky inspired build. So it got to like the middle of October and I realised I had no content for Halloween, and I started to panic because if I don't do anything now, I'm gonna have to wait till next year. So I jumped onto Google and started like frantically searching for inspiration pics, and I came across this website where they had detailed the top most haunted houses in America, and I was immediately drawn to the Samuel A. Mudd's house. Now, Samuel A. Mudd was a conspirator in the Abraham Lincoln assassination. I am a massive history buff. I love everything to do with history, and I actually studied American history in college. Now, I could have done British history, but that's like 2,000 years worth of studying. So I definitely went for the easier route of the American 250 years instead. Plus, I think I have a crush on Abraham Lincoln. It's definitely the sexy hat. I mean, my boyfriend has like 4 boxes full of hats, so I think I've got a thing for hats. But it was definitely the houses linked to America's infamous assassination, as well as all of the paranormal activity that I read about that happens in this house. So when I was researching the house, there was a story that I read where one of Samuel A. Mudd's young children was sitting on a railing and the child fell and quite badly injured themselves. The child was then put to bed later on that evening and tragically died in its crib. And people that visit the museum have often seen a ghost child roaming the corridors, which is pretty freaky. There's also been reports of sharp temperature changes as you move from room to room without much reason for it, as well as like scratching and biting. And some people have also claimed to see a group of ghostly Confederate soldiers patrolling the grounds. So that's pretty scary. But getting back to the whole historical facts of this house. So Samuel A. Mudd was a doctor, and after John Wilkes Booth shot President Lincoln, him and his accomplice, David Herold, escaped the city and made their way to Samuel's house. Now, when Wilkes Booth jumped from the balcony onto the stage, he fractured his leg and he went to Samuel Mudd's for medical attention. Now, Samuel patched up his leg, he had a carpenter make a pair of crutches for Wilkes Booth, and then allowed Herold and Wilkes Booth to spend the night in his house. Now, it wasn't until a few weeks after the assassination where Samuel was arrested and questioned in relation to why he hadn't come forward and told the authorities about his encounter with John Wilkes Booth. And Samuel claimed that the reason why he hadn't come forward earlier was that he was afraid that the conspirators would come back and murder him and his family, which I just think is a load of rubbish because he was seen having drinks with Wilkes Booth in the months prior to the assassination. So there's definitely evidence to suggest that he knew about the plot to kill Lincoln. However, that's probably a story for another day. Now, Halloween is probably one of my favourite times of year, and it's a bit creepy because I kind of have a ghost story of my own. So when I was younger, my mum, she used to take me and my brother over to the local playground where they had like a tennis court, and my mum loves tennis. So she would take me and my brother over to the courts during the summer holidays and we would play tennis. And for some reason, and I don't know whose smart idea this was, but basically the playground was right next door to a cemetery. And I mean like a cemetery that is still used up until this day. And there's like a crematorium in there, and it's massive, like it's absolutely huge. And basically we were playing tennis, and my brother hit the ball over the fence and it landed in this gap between the playground and the cemetery. So I went through this like hole in the fence to try and get the ball back. And as I was trying to find it, I looked up and there was this man standing above me, but he didn't really look like he was wholly there. He kind of had this real ghostly kind of sheen about him. And he was dressed in what looked like a military uniform with like a weird trucker cap. And I just remember like being stooped over trying to pick up this tennis ball and just being absolutely petrified. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. He didn't do anything. He was just like standing there staring at me. Anyway, so my mum then called my name, and it sort of like snapped me out of this weird trance that I was in. And I like immediately ran back through the hole in the fence and over to my mum, who then like proceeded to ask me if I was okay and if anything had happened. And I was like, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Like, don't worry. You know, I didn't see anything. I didn't know how to say to her what I had seen, what I'd experienced. And the weird thing was that after my mum had called me and I could sort of turn my head to follow the sound of her voice, when I looked back towards this like figure, he disappeared. It was so creepy. Like, and it's always sort of stuck with me. And I'm not sure if it was just my child's imagination going a bit haywire, or if he really was there, or if it was just like because I knew it was a cemetery that was next door. I don't know. It's a really creepy story. So yeah, Halloween has a sort of strange kind of feeling in my heart, but there's definitely some cons to Halloween as well as the pros, I feel. So I do really enjoy the Halloween season, and I'm always a fan of like going trick-or-treating or seeing kids in their little cute costumes, or like, you know, just I love all that kind of stuff. But there have been a couple of times in my life where I've experienced some cons of Halloween. So when I was about 15 or 16 maybe, I was at home with my dog. My parents had gone out for the evening. My brother, I think, was upstairs playing on his PlayStation or whatever. And there was a knock on the door, so I went to answer it thinking, well, it's going to be trick-or-treaters. But it was quite late. It was about maybe like 8:30 towards 9 p.m. at night, and it was quite dark. So I opened the door, and there was these teenagers in like tracky bottoms and, you know, t-shirts or whatever, hoodies, and they just had a mask on their face. And so I proceeded to like give them some candy that was in a bowl by the front door. And they literally like threw the candy back at me and wanted money instead. And I said, sorry, I'm not going to give you money. Like that's ridiculous. It's not, you know, you're begging. This is so bad. Anyway, so I closed the door, went back to the living room to watch my film. The doorbell goes again. So I sort of decided I'm going to ignore it. I'm not going to answer them. It's fine. Anyway, so a few minutes later, our living room is at the front of the house, and I saw these figures go past my house, into the gate, onto the grass in front of the window, and they egged my house. And I tell you, I have never leapt off my sofa so quick in my entire life. I literally bolted out the front door, was like shouting obscenities at these like little ruffian kids running down the street trying to catch them. And in my head, I'm like, I've got no idea what I'm going to do if I catch up with these kids. But luckily they were way faster than me. But I was absolutely livid. Like, I mean, how rude of you to like first come in looking for money, which is just downright rude. And then when you don't get any, to come back and egg someone's house. Like, how despicable do you have to be? Anyway, so that wasn't a very good Halloween. And for the next couple of years, I was pretty much anti-Halloween because I was so upset that someone would do that to my house. And I spent ages then having to clean the windows. They proper pelted my house with like a full box of eggs. It was awful. Anyway, so let's get back to this build, shall we? I used an awful lot of the tool mod when I created this build. I really wanted to replicate this idea of like overturned furniture. I wanted to create the vibe that this house had completely fallen into disrepair. It was abandoned. You would have seen in the garden, I took one of the statues with the hat on that, now I think about it, looks a lot like Abraham Lincoln. But I sort of knocked him over, and I took one of the columns that you can use as a surface object, and I sort of leant that against it. So it sort of gave this idea that this house has been completely abandoned, and I really love that vibe. I just think it's so interesting and it's really clever, and I really enjoy doing it. And I heard something ridiculous a while back on one of the Facebook groups that I follow for The Sims, where someone had said that if you use the tool mod, EA block your build on the gallery so that console players can't find your content. Now, I have never heard of anything so ridiculous in my entire Sims 4 content creating career. I mean, that's absolute hogwash. That's not true at all. So please, 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 if you are on a console playing the game and you want to download my builds, you do not need to worry. I have used the tool mod, but it does not affect your ability whatsoever to download this build and put it in your game. It'll look exactly the same as how I created it. You don't even need to have the tool mod installed. It doesn't affect your ability whatsoever to use this build. I just want to sort of put that out here as a disclaimer, because I saw that post and I literally lost my mind. I was so angry and upset that this person was banning people from posting in this group if they'd used tool mod based on this myth that EA blocks builds. I've never heard of EA blocking any builds on the gallery. Anyway, so I feel like now is also a really good time to promote another video that I did very recently. So you'll see in this build, I've used a lot of the scratches and like holes in the walls and things that you get with the vampires and Strangerville packs, and I've layered them over mirrors, windows, and paintings to sort of give this idea that the object has been destroyed or some way is just like really old and torn. And the way you can do that is, but basically delete the wall that you want to place the object on, raise up the scratch wall decoration and place it over the top of the item. Now, I did do a short video here on YouTube explaining how I did this, so please do go and check that out if you want to know how I created that sort of broken style on the paintings. Now, I also had an idea when I was building this that because it's not entirely functional, I mean, there is like a toilet, bath, there's beds in this build. I used the broken fridge and the broken stove from the Strangerville pack just to try and show that this house is completely derelict. So if you want to put this in your game, you are going to have to sort of replace those objects with functioning fridges and everything else. But my idea was that maybe all of you guys in the community can take this build and beautify it. You can either turn it into a modern family home, or you can reinstate it to its grandeur and make it into a stately house for an 1860s family. If you're planning on playing with the Generations Challenge, then this is a perfect house for you to do that. So if you do want to take this build and go with that challenge, it is on the gallery, so please just search for my ID, which is laursimming, and you'll be able to grab that build and put it in your game. So we're coming to the end of the video, the screenshots are coming up. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe. It really helps me to know that you're enjoying my content, and I will see you all next time. Bye!